Hey guys, welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. Obviously, it's me, Alex Whiteley, your host. Joining with me today is Carl Jones from the Shropshire Business Magazine. How are you?
I'm very well, very well.
Thanks for coming in. You got suggested to me by it was Mark Harris.
Oh, okay, yeah. From the business company.
Yes, great guy. He was helping me out a bit because we're trying to change things up at the Biscuit. We want to become like a CIC or something that stands for something, rather than a hobby.
But you've got a great setup here, haven't you, as well?
Well, this is the thing, right? So what we're doing here is we're making use of the empty units. And Philip here and the guys here at the parade, we're very grateful that they've done that. So this is like a third unit I think we've moved to. So we're looking for something a bit more permanent. So we need funding for that. And to get funding, you need to be a business or a company. So we are definitely going to be making a few changes at the Biscuit. I'm not very business minded at all. Put me in front of a microphone, that's where my genius is, right? That's where I belong. But when it comes to filling out forms, talking about tax deductibles and revenues, I'm not brilliant at stuff like that. So
there's nothing wrong with that, though, because the whole point of making a successful business is to get on and just concentrate on creating and doing what you really love doing, isn't it?
Well, this is what I'm good at, and like I did drop a message on Facebook, and lots of people have offered to sit down and have a conversation with me, but I have this terrible problem of filling up every single hour, every single minute of the week with editing, interviewing, work, family. So like when it comes to even like a conversation via Messenger, sometimes I'm kind of like, I don't have time for that. It's really weird.
It just goes to prove that the thing they say about men that can't multitask is absolute nonsense, doesn't it? Don't you think?
Well, this morning, I've been editing audio whilst looking at your website as well. So let's talk about what you do, because you're a fascinating chap, because you don't just do this magazine. You're a movie critic as well, right?
I've done that for BBC Radio Shropshire for over 20 years. Yeah,
amazing. I love that so much.
How it started is because I used to review the movies for the Shropshire Star. I mean, I worked for the Shropshire Star for over 25 years, and I used to do the film pages for them and for the Wolverhampton Express and Star. And one of the weeks, I'm going back to this, like the mid-90s now probably, one of the weeks BBC Radio Shropshire's regular film critic was either ill or on holiday or something, and somebody rang me and said, would I step in and do it for a week? And
yes.
And I said, absolutely, I would. Yeah, so I ran as fast as I could to my car, got down there, and so after that, for the first year or so, I became like the fill-in person while the regular critic was doing his stuff, and then he retired, and they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I have to say, great credit to the Shropshire Star. They let me do it for the first 7 or 8 years in Shropshire Star's time, because I was badged up as the Shropshire Star's movie man, so it's good PR for the newspaper. And then when I left the Star, I started doing more work for BBC Shropshire, sort of day a week or so, and yeah, I mean, talking movies, I thought, to be honest, the movie show was going to be cast aside come March this year, because when the world went mad and your cinemas closed, and you suddenly think, what are we going to have to talk about? But actually, I think there's more to talk about now than there's ever been.
I think now what we can do is, I've talked about this a lot, because obviously I work with different shows, and a lot of what we cover is movies and what's coming out. I mean, like just last night we were laughing at Arpatz's accent in The Devil All the Time. Because
what did you think of that? I thought it was a bit of a weird movie, that.
I thought the movie was great. I thought the tension was brilliant. I thought Tom Holland was brilliant. I thought he was great. I just don't understand why they chose three main actors that are not from the US to pick up a West Virginia accent, which is terribly difficult to do. And then you've got Arpats that goes from, if you know the characters, he goes from Cletus in The Simpsons, Teabag from Prison Break, back to Elvis, and then back again. You know what I mean? He's just a preacher. And I just thought, why, if you're going to choose a film with those accents, why go for British actors?
They do it so often, don't they? I mean, I was talking on the radio the other day about the streaming release, the free-to-air premiere of The Girl on the Train, and they cast Emily Blunt as an American, and it's a British story, and they take the British story to America, they take a British actress with them, and they want them to be American. It just doesn't make sense, does it?
It's funny. I mean, it was weird seeing Tom Holland running around swearing,
going dark. Spider-Man goes dark.
Finally, because he's this kid actor. That's just, I mean, that's always fascinating anyway, isn't it? I mean, like when you think of kids people you've watched grow up on the screen, when they make that transition to doing things a little bit more R-rated or a bit more violent or something, it's quite cool. because you feel like you've watched them.
It's hard for them sometimes as well. I mean, take somebody like Daniel Radcliffe, who was Harry Potter to everybody, and he obviously, the minute the movie franchise finished, you could tell that he was going out of his way to do something completely polar opposite to that. Whether it's bearing all on stage to some quite dark, quirky movies.
I mean, I've been watching a lot of R-Pat recently as well, because obviously he's the new Batman. I'm a big Batman fan. And I don't like to discount anybody. I mean, when it came to Ben Affleck being a Batman, I was kind of like, oh my God, this guy's such a nerd. He's not going to get it wrong. And I feel like he was let down by the writers. But then when R-Pats came up, everybody was like, oh, we're going to have sparkly Batman because of the Twilight reference, obviously. But he's done a few roles different roles. I mean, in Devil All the Time, he was this outlandish preacher, who's got this accent, and then the other one he did
well, it's Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, isn't he?
He's
That's another
he's
completely different character again. So I'm not going to name drop, but I was talking yesterday to one of the stunt guys who's working on the new Batman film. He was showing me a few of the tests of some of the stunts that they're doing. Actually, the driving stunts, because they've just started. They're in rehearsals for it again, and they've got 4 weeks. They're taking over an airfield to do all sorts of wacky chases with some.
Because they're filming it in the UK, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Some pretty cool cars by the look of it.
Yeah. Well, that Mustang thing, was it a Charger? The Dodge Charger he's got. That looks cool. So, your passion for movies, where does that come from? Is it something that you've always had a passion for?
I mean, from as long as I ever remember. I always remember the first big films I went to see at the cinema. I was taken with my dad, and I just I know things have changed dramatically, in recent years, and people are trying hard to recreate the cinema experience with the technology you've got in your home. But for me, there is still nothing like watching a film with an audience as well. I mean, particularly some kinds of movies. I think comedies, feel-good comedies, where you can feel the energy of an audience. An action movie with the excitement. That's why the big comic superhero films still play brilliantly on the widest screen, the biggest IMAX, the noisiest screen you can find. I mean, the first thing I remember as a kid, I fell in love with the Bond films. I remember my dad sat me down one day and said, sit down here, son, I think you'll quite like this. And I think it was the first time Goldfinger was ever aired on British television, so I'm talking like mid-70s here, and I think my dad regretted ever saying that to me, because I just became completely intoxicated with the Bond movies, and whether the new one will ever be released or not is another matter, isn't it?
Well, they say it's ready, but they want to make that revenue, don't they?
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. But you're right, there is something really magical about movies when it comes to the family. I mean, there's some key points, key moments. I mean, as far as the cinema is concerned, I don't think you'll ever be able to recreate that. The smell of popcorn, the bass of the speakers, the kind of anticipation of going in. I remember, there's 3 moments I always remember. One, I always remember going to watch Jurassic Park as a kid. I was only young. It was terrifying, but I'll never forget it because I liked that terrifying. It was kind of like one of those, oh, wow, that's scary, but let's do it again. And then there was the first time I saw Avatar. Avatar was one of the most amazing things I ever saw on the screen. I watched it in 3D. It was on the second release. I'd never been a fan of 3D, but this was just something I'd never seen before. And also Saw 3. Sounds daft, but
I wasn't expecting that.
No, you weren't expecting that at all, because it's just one of the most amazing things. There's a scene, this is quite graphic, I'm sorry, but there's a scene in Saw 3 where the skull gets revealed because the skin gets peeled back, and they put like a drill bit on top of the head. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking away from the screen. And as I look, there's this bodybuilder, this huge guy who can barely fit in his seat. And he's looking through the gaps of his fingers, and he's shaking. And I'm like, wow. That's the power of movies, right?
I remember going to see the Blair Witch Project at the cinema.
I never watched that. I don't know why.
And that was the same. There were some people that you would have expected would just think this is a load of hokum, a load of nonsense. And there was some people who were absolutely shaking in their seats. I mean, because one of the downsides of doing this job is that a lot of the time you go to a media preview of a film, so you're maybe either sat there pretty much in an empty screen on your own, or with a group of cynical film critics who don't tend to show their emotion very much because it's not what they do. So you don't actually get any real chance to sometimes gauge how it engaged with an audience. Some kind of films, I like to go and see it with Joe Public, and see how they respond to it in the way that the movie makers were hoping, particularly comedies, as I say.
It must be really hard to not get overwhelmed too much, because sometimes, because I tried to, when I first started doing this podcasting, I did a show for a radio station, and it was called Al's Entertainment Buzz, and it would be 8 minutes long, and I would have to fill all the stuff that's going on around the world, movie and geek related, sort of, in 8 minutes, and it was hard. But with my other shows as well, I had a bit more time, so I wanted to be able to sort of say, "Oh, I've been to see this film; it was amazing." But I mean, Baby Driver, Guardians of the Galaxy, things like this I was watching at the time. I came out of the cinema just bouncing, singing, dancing, But then you tend to do these things where I've got a serious loyalty when it comes to Batman. I went to watch a Justice League, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's awful, it's terrible," and I was kind of like, "No, you're wrong. It's really good. I don't know what you're doing." And then the kind of dust settled, and I realised.
And you realised it was terrible.
I made a right idiot of myself.
It was terrible, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. So have you ever done that? Have you ever got it wrong? Because of your own emotions, how you feel about it?
Well, maybe take it back to the Bond movies. Sometimes, if you go along to, there's so much razzmatazz with the media screenings of those. They'll usually, a couple of times they've hired the Odeon Leicester Square, and the press are sort of invited in there, and it's tighter security than an airport departure lounge, and so there's so much hype to it. You're built up to think, well, this has got to be good, and I think. I maybe fell into that trap a little bit with the second Daniel Craig film, Quantum of Solace. I didn't think it was absolutely astonishingly brilliant when everybody out was coming out and saying, "Oh, this is another amazing gritty movie," and I just thought it's edited like an MTV music video. It was all over the place. And I gave it I think I gave it 7.5 out of 10 or something like that when I reviewed it. When I look back now, I think it's probably nearer a 5.5 for me. That so I don't know whether I've ever said something is absolutely brilliant, and then in retrospect I felt that it's terrible.
Yeah.
But somehow an 8 out of 10 sounds a stack better than a 7, doesn't it? Somehow.
And sometimes it really hurts to give someone that you really love a bad score. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. Kevin Smith is one of my heroes, and I went to watch Jay and Silent Bob reboot. And because I'm part of the Garmy, the Kevin Smith fans, I'm part of all that. I used to be an admin for the Garmy. And when they asked me about what did I think about the movie on the show, what I do, I was like, it was good if you know who Kevin Smith is fan service. But if I was to give that to some 17-year-old kid now, 18-year-old, and be like, "This is Kevin Smith, I'm going to watch you this movie, show you this movie about who he is," he'd probably be like, "This is cringy."
I think there's a lot of films, actually, to be honest, where you feel like you almost want to give two different scores to them. A bit like I'm thinking back to last year, perhaps the Downton Abbey movie would be an example of that. Mm-hmm. If you were absolutely in love with the series and despaired when it ended, you're going to love it because it just serves up a sort of, essentially 3 episodes pinned into one. If you're looking at it from just a cold movie experience point of view, you think, well, actually, when you boil it all down, nothing happens. Nothing happens in it at all. To be honest, I think probably the thing I find the most difficult is when local movie makers who are working on a really tight budget, with people, working for nothing, will come to me sometimes and say, will you review our movie? And I find it really difficult because you can't compare chalk and cheese like that. You can't compare a low-budget movie that's been shot in 3 days on an iPhone with the latest Marvel Avengers Assemble, and how do you then? Oh, sorry, sorry, I'm wrecking your equipment.
No, that's fine.
Give it a mark out of 10, and put it in comparison in a league table with other films that expectation is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, so you do have to have that kind of independent stance on things. I mean, I know a lot of filmmakers. I've spoken to a lot of filmmakers. I'm working with someone too, and yeah, you're right. When you see something that's been made with next to nothing, and you compare it to, the likes of Scorsese or something, you can't. Yeah, you're right. But you then got to throw him a favour. You got to throw him a bone, haven't you? Because do you feel like that's what you've got to do? I just always feel that the thing to do is to talk about the things I liked, and not to dwell too long on the things that I don't. But it's a bit like a restaurant review. You're doing no one any favours by saying this is a fantastic meal if it really isn't, and then somebody drives 50 miles on the back of your recommendation, sits there and says, "What was he talking about?" So you can't just tell blatant porkies about things. But yeah. What are your thoughts on the current toxic kind of geek culture at the moment? Because I feel like there's a lot of unnecessary sort of haze thrown towards things, especially with the Star Wars guys. There seems to be a lot of, even if something's brilliant, it can be really. I mean, they've ruined people's lives, haven't they? That culture.
Some of it has. Let me tell you, here's a nice segue into my other job, because Shropshire Business Magazine that I edit, the guy who designs our designer is a member of Fantha Tracks, one of the Star Wars fan groups.
Wow, okay.
Paul Naylor, and so we talk a lot. We talk a lot about franchises like that, and so I know from chatting with Paul, that the last 3 Star Wars movies particularly have created so much toxic debate. I think. I mean, it was the Last Jedi, wasn't it? The penultimate one.
Yes.
I mean, I thought that was terrible.
I really liked it. I think
when that bit where Carrie Fisher's floating in the middle of what's that all about?
I like that. I like that because she is a Jedi. She is a Jedi, and I don't know. You can debate about it for hours, but I think when it comes to Star Wars, it's very much it's based on your perspective. So how you look at it, how you see it.
I think it's based on where you came into the franchise, because talking about those big event movies that I went to see with my dad at the time, the original Star Wars, 78 when it came to Britain, wasn't it, was one of them, and I was absolutely captivated by it. That and The Empire Strikes Back particularly, I remember going to see it at cinemas. And then as time goes by and life changes and you're in a different period of your own life as well when you go back and revisit these films, it's never going to be the same. Even if they made something that was essentially the exact same film and you're watching it 20 years later, you wouldn't have the same emotional response to it.
Yeah, I get that, actually.
And it was nothing like it, when Star Wars first came out. There was nothing like those kind of movies, was there? Whereas now, there's a lot of competition.
And it's on a bigger scale as well. I mean, Star Wars has always been on a big scale, but for me, growing up, Star Wars was those movies that were on in the background while the turkey was cooking at Christmas. It's one of those things where I'll sit down and watch it. It's only when I learned about the story of Anakin Skywalker and kind of where this is going, I was kind of like, oh, this is good, and I really got stuck into it. And episode 3 for me is just beautiful. That kind of clearing up that gap there.
You've got to say, hats off to George Lucas, and his mind and the way he planned it all out. Right from that day one when everybody thought he was a complete nutter and nobody understood what he was trying to do and nobody wanted to back him and he was worried about whether it was going to cost him a fortune. I went to the press launch of Revenge of the Sith. That's episode 3, isn't it? Really? In London, and that's it. I went to a press conference with George Lucas and Hayden Christensen and a couple of the others there, and it wasn't a one-to-one, but there was me and probably 3 or 4 other journalists. And he's a difficult person to interview, George Lucas, though. He doesn't give much away. Yeah, I imagine so. And I feel sorry sorry, listeners. We're talking about Star Wars. We will get onto Shrewsbury stuff in a minute. But there is a point I want to bring up about Hayden. As far as critics are concerned and the fans, I feel like Hayden Christensen was served very much a disservice because they were like, oh, he's such a wooden actor. Listen, he's got no energy about him. But it wasn't until my friend Eric Fluger, what's up, Eric, and was kind of like, listen to the way Darth Vader talks and then listen to how Hayden Christensen talks. He's reverse engineered that voice, which actually makes him a genius. And I was like, huh. So when you think of that, I was kind of like, wow, he actually did a good job. I mean, at first I thought he was wooden, but when you think of it like that, yeah, I'd still maybe veer a little bit towards wooden. I know what you mean, though. He's obviously, he'd obviously researched it, and he knew what the elements that the fans would want to dissect. Yeah. It's like I said, I loved it. We could talk about here for how long have you got? You said you got a thing at 12 o'clock, but I mean, can you cancel? I'll come back later. The Shrewsbury Business Magazine, Shropshire, sorry. No, I did that on stage. I went, it's the Shrewsbury Virtual Show, and it wasn't. It was the Shropshire Virtual Show. Where did this all begin for you? Well, I used to be the business editor at the Shropshire Star in the 1990s. So that's how my connection to business really started. And there used to be a magazine in Shropshire called Shropshire Business Today, which I used to do some writing for shortly after I left the Shropshire Star. And for one reason or another, the editor of that moved away and that magazine just sort of ceased to exist. So when I'm out and about, really, people kept saying, what's happened to that business magazine? What's happened to that business magazine? And so, after a couple of months, I got together, a good friend of mine is a chap called Henry Carpenter, who used to edit the Shropshire magazine. And over a beer or 6 or 7 one night, we started talking about, well, why don't we pool our expertise, really? Why don't I bring my business background and Henry bring his glossy top-end magazine editing background, and let's have a look at see if we can put something together. And the Shropshire Business Today was more of a business lifestyle magazine, so it would have things in it like holiday reviews and fitness columns, and I wanted Shropshire Business to be purely hardcore is probably not the word, but a simple business-to-business publication, just full of... there's so much going. Shropshire just punches above its weight all of the time, I think, from a business point of view. I've always loved the fact that you can go around any corner, you can knock on the door of an unassuming business unit in any, you'll find in any of the Shrewsbury industrial estates, and you'll find an amazing story, and they're making things for people you would never believe.
I absolutely, yeah.
I'm going to slurp a coffee.
Yeah, please drink your coffee. Yeah, please enjoy. I actually. That's one of the reasons why I started the biscuit. I mean, the way I explain this when I talk about somebody coming on my show is I want to find out your story. I want to find out your story so the listeners can, because you walk past a business or you flick through the yellow pages in the old days, or you're online and you see like a name or a logo that you recognise but you've never used before. If you heard something about them that made you like them and made you want to, get to know them a bit more, it might entice you to go in through the door, and that's very much what you're doing with the magazine, right?
I think this next comment is hugely generalising, but I think the principle is right, in that a lot of the companies that have the time and the desire to shout about themselves are usually the ones that haven't got the most interesting stories to tell. It's the ones that are frantically busy, can't turn the work away, haven't even got time to think sometimes about PR and marketing, particularly small and medium-sized companies that have got the great tales to tell. And actually, because their perhaps senior team have got their nose to the grindstone and they're really close to the day-to-day, they don't take a step back and consider just how interesting what they do is to the general public. They just think it's an everyday occurrence, and so they don't think, I wonder if this is of interest, would people like to know about what we do?
Yeah,
because sometimes they're the ones that are worried about getting too much publicity because they've got enough business and they're quite happy. Things, of course, have changed quite dramatically on that front in the past 6 months.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a good point. Actually, we'll get onto the C word in a bit. I mentioned Mark Harris at the beginning of my show. I hope he doesn't mind me talking about him, but it's nice things. When I was younger, and I always thought of the businessmen in suits because it was never me. I was never that kind of guy, and I still am not today. I didn't have the kind of respect for that kind of world as I do now. Not after speaking to people during this with the biscuit, learning about how clever people can be, building their own things, making their own things, and actually that is I find that really respectable when somebody can put their mind to something and create something and then put some love and passion into it and make it into something big, like something simple like Mike from Stop Cafe. I always mention him because he was one of my first interviews. He was like, I'm going to make a coffee shop. Now you see that Stop logo, you know what that is. Everybody knows what Stop is. I've got a lot of respect for that. I don't know where I was going with this, but
well, it's a risk that people have to take to do that as well, isn't it? They put a lot on the line if they're going to do that.
It terrifies me. And it's only because this is what I mean with Mark Harris, is where I brought him up. Is I sat with him and he was like, "Well, you are doing what you're doing now is business to business," and I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Well, you're telling people about businesses and you might generate more business for them. So what you're doing with the biscuit is business to business, from biscuit to Stop Cafe, business to such and such, business to, And I was like, wow, I never looked at that. I just thought it was a podcast.
Do you know what I actually think? One of the biggest strengths of places like Shrewsbury, particularly Shropshire as a whole, is that there's a desire to want to actually try and do business with each other, to sort of keep the Shrewsbury pound in the town.
Yeah.
And you don't find that everywhere else. I mean, we branched out with this and we did a magazine in Cheshire. We've got one in Birmingham Business Magazine as well now.
Nice.
Certainly, if you compare Cheshire to Shropshire, I don't think there's a we're all in it together kind of spirit anywhere near as much north of the border as you find here. Because on the face of it, you look at it and say, well, the counties are very similar, because here we've got Shrewsbury, the black and white timbered buildings, they've got Chester. Here we've got Telford, they've got Warrington. But there isn't this feeling that actually we want to try and champion what people are doing in Shropshire. And I think some of the business support organisations over the past few months have worked really hard to try to keep people networked as much as you can. I mean, I know that the guys at the Chamber of Commerce have done so many online networking groups which have been really well subscribed, and I think that everybody's realised the importance of that at the moment, because making it clear that throughout all of this you're still out there. You haven't just put up the shutters and given up and waited until it's blown over. You're looking at either finding a way through it or looking to diversify. Because they say a time like this is an era of the entrepreneur, don't they? It brings forward your idea for your plan B comes out, doesn't it?
And this is what I've seen time and time again. I mean, with the cooperation between companies in Shrewsbury, that's been one of the biggest selling points for Shrewsbury for me, because this whole experiment, this whole thing with the biscuit was me finding out about Shrewsbury, and one of the constancies was cooperation, people working together. And it was just amazing to me that there's a lot of people here that it's not all about the money. It's about, let's build relationships, because it's almost like a trade, isn't it? You know, you got Amy, Madame Lammer's Flowers here. She might need someone that does boxes, or she might need someone that does business cards, and so they build these relationships and they all work in harmony, and that's beautiful. You know,
and personal recommendation is still the most powerful marketing tool, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
if I wanted business cards doing, or flowers, or whatever you say, and I to come to you and say, right, have you used any of these guys before? What would you recommend them? That's far more powerful than a search engine's ever going to be for me.
So we've worked on sort of the strengths of sort of Shrewsbury as a business place. What do you reckon are the weaknesses? What the things that let Shrewsbury down? Is there anything? I mean, I know you like to be quite positive, but is there anything we can work on in it as a town?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the things that Shrewsbury is maybe perceived as being weak on, it's already acknowledged, and it's starting to try and do something about, to be honest. I mean, it's always suffered from being sort of the extreme western fringe of the M54, A5 corridor, the western fringe of the West Midlands, and so I don't think it's always at the front of the queue.
It's a bit isolated. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it comes to big investment projects that come into the region, you know, if you take things like the Marches local enterprise kind of region, and the Greater West Midlands, it always seems to, you know, it's dominated by Birmingham, Wolverhampton, the Black Country, maybe Telford, but you know, you have to work that much harder, I think, to get people to keep going out towards that place called Wales. I mean, it always used to make me smile when I worked on the Shropshire Star, and you'd ring a press office from, you know, down the other side of Watford Gap, and they'd say, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "I'm from the Shropshire Star," and they'd say, "Oh, Shropshire. Which county's that in then?" You know, and you think, and so you'd say, "Well, it's in that little gap between Birmingham and Wales," and that's as close as you could ever get.
Birmingham, it's by Birmingham, just
yeah. But I think that you know, the negative side of it, you know, there's been a perception in Shrewsbury that, oh, it's a traffic nightmare, you can't get into town, it's not built for the car. In complete contrast to, you know, our friends in Telford down the road. And so, you know, almost the weaknesses of Shrewsbury are the strengths of Telford, and vice versa. I mean, I think you see a lot of people who will drive from Shrewsbury to Telford to work during the day. They'll drive from Telford to Shrewsbury for their leisure in the evening, and it's almost different kinds of directions of traffic at different times of day. But I don't think that's anywhere near as polar as it was. I mean, I think things like the flax mill development, unfortunate timing for that really at the moment, but you know, that's got the potential to create a really exciting creative quarter.
I mean, I spoke to Marianne about the flax mill a while ago. It was during the Darwin Festival. I need to get them in actually, because I'm really interested in the little business hubs they've got going on there, because I think that's really important. And we spoke to Joel at the prison. He's congratulations to Joel, by the way. He's just bought that prison. Well done. It's a great bit of his business. He's going to do something similar there, because he's going to give the smaller guy a chance to sort of like flourish and grow, and I think that's really important, like, because like you said, this is the age of the entrepreneur. This is where we're going to see some people turn nothing into something, I believe anyway. I mean, I said, like, at the back end of the pandemic, when things are sort of dying down, hopefully that's going to be the time to open up a business, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, people, you can see in the last 2 issues that we've done of Shropshire Business Magazine, you can just look through the pages and you can see people that have already started quite clearly thinking, right, what are we going to do here? How do we come up with another opportunity? You take somebody like Beth at Shropshire Festivals, you know, and
big fan.
You know, huge chunks of her business have just been ripped away from under, and
but she hasn't stopped.
But she's got, you know, 5-6 different ideas on the go. I mean, saw her launching something about a hamper company a few days ago.
Yeah,
and
they've got the winter festival as well.
Yeah, and you know, it's maybe, I think you perhaps had a 5-year business plan before COVID, and you've had to condense it into about 3 months, haven't you? And pick out the bits that are most important, and so you know, as long as you've got the drive. And I actually think as well, at the moment, you want the balance of fun versus profit, don't you? You know, you want to offer something. It's a bit. I mean, going back to our film talk, the sort of the hyper depressing movies, which leave you feeling like you need to slit your wrist at the end of it. That's not really what you want. You want something feel good at the moment, don't you? And so some of the businesses that are offering a feel good package to people. There's a girl out in Ponsbury who's turned some redundant farm buildings into these little beauty pods, which were featured in the last issue, and that's exactly the sort of thing, creative, quirky.
I saw something about that. Yeah. I mean, there lockdown, for example. That's going far back now. I mean, I think it's lockdown 2.0 or probably 1.5 now that we're going into, so it's semi-lockdown.
I'll be on week 28 of broadcasting my movie show on BBC Shropshire from home next week.
Wow.
So that's how long that's been. So
I'd love to like talk with you more about that, actually, because I want to, we should definitely keep in touch after this, and because I love that. I love talking about things that you enjoy, especially with movies and business and things like that, because there is definitely a certain amount of attraction when it comes to someone talking about something they're passionate about, something they can just, it's jazz, isn't it? Whereas if you're struggling through through something you're not quite brilliant at.
People say to me sometimes, how can you go up on a stage and host an event, or how can you go onto the radio and do a live broadcast? And I'm sure it's the same from your point of view. You think, well, I can do it because it's an arena where I know my stuff and I enjoy doing it. If you asked me to go and give a 40-minute presentation at the university on quantum physics, I'd be struggling. I'm not going to lie, But sensible amounts of research, being in your comfort zone, and actually realising that you don't have to be perfect with everything you do. We're all flawed human beings, aren't we? And so it's not about delivering an absolutely grade A perfect presentation. It's about relating with people.
That's what I love about what I do. Is I'm very transparent. If I mess up, I mess up, because that's my journey, right?
But people love you for it. Sometimes that way, because there's an honesty about it. Then, isn't there? Thank goodness, because I mess up quite a lot.
Well, I said the Shrewsbury virtual show in front of tens of thousands of people, which was one of my highlights. But you move on. How do you keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to? Because I was looking for the website, and there's lots of like intricate sort of details about businesses. Whereas a new manager will come in, or there'll be a staff change here, or this, that, and the other. How do you keep your finger on your pulse with that? Do they get in touch with you, or are you just constantly keeping an eye on things? Batman sort of standing scowling at the...
Yeah, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. Yeah. Well, it's a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, now that we're 4.5 years down the line with publishing Shropshire Business, we are, thankfully, hopefully, touching wood, much better known than we were. And so more information comes into us. But in those first, probably the first 12, 18 months, I think I had a head start in that I was already known from my time when I was on the Shropshire Star as a business editor, and the first thing I really did was go out and start reconnecting with a lot of people who I'd maybe lost contact with, just to get out, making sure that you are, as I said, we're so well networked in Shropshire, dipping into things like the chamber network clubs or the business chambers, the chambers of trade, the growth hubs, and just getting out and about, having a natter. And making it clear that actually I want to know what you're doing. So please, can you just include me on your invite list? And so there was a lot of groundwork that needed to be done to start with, to make it clear that that we're interested in telling the story. And then of course the pressure is on to make sure you do a sensible, good, decent job telling their story. And then if you do, and if people then start talking about, we saw your story in the Shropshire Business Magazine, or we saw the Business Magazine in the Parade shops, or we saw it in in the middle of Shrewsbury, we saw it at the Growth Hub or the Chamber, people then start to think, actually, the visibility of the magazine is our selling point. And if people think, well, this is everywhere, then people think, well, okay, we need to be in this. So our distribution model really is the thing that's helped to drive the traffic to us in terms of editorial content. I probably get on my editor at shropshirebiz.com email address now 200 emails a day, I would have thought. Now a lot of those are round robin national press releases that are of no interest to me whatsoever, and they've just happened to found the email address off the database. But that does just show that we're on the circuit. And the same happening. Our Birmingham magazine is 2 years younger than this, and so we've been through that exact same process. Nice. At the end of the day, people do business with people, I believe, and you're far more likely you'd be far more likely to tell me a story, particularly if it's maybe a difficult story, a sensitive story, if we've met. If I'm just a name at the end of an email, even a Zoom call, it's not the same as having a relationship and feeling that you're comfortable enough to be able to just perhaps pick up the phone and say, look, I've got a bit of a story here. Things like job losses, or if you've got a sensitive one. And the other thing is being a trusted journalist, because you want people to feel they can tell you something in confidence. And that it won't leak out, and that's and the absolute journalist stock in trade, and that the moment that you lose that, then you will lose everybody's confidence.
I can imagine that happens quite a bit, actually. We're doing this right now because in about 6 months we're going to be doing this, and this is what it leads on to. But don't tell anyone.
It does, and I always treat that as a compliment, that they feel they're able to tell me that, and they trust me with that information, because they know that if I've got the background, I can maybe prepare and do a proper job with it when it's ready to be unleashed. And the only time that I would be slightly unhappy with that is if they then went and gave it to a rival publication first, and I found out I was reading about it.
Next time. That happened with me with Charlie Adlard. I talk about this a lot. It's Comic Salopia last year. He was talking on the steps there at the university, and I was going to try and get a little bit interview with him, and he was just kind of chatting away with someone. It was at the end. Everyone was exhausted. I went up and asked him, and he was very dry with me. He was kind of like, "No, I'm busy, sorry." And I was kind of and he's usually a really friendly guy. He's really good.
He's a big champion of Shropshire, isn't he?
He's a friend of mine now. He's really good. I feel privileged to say that. But he was talking at the time to someone, the only person in Shrewsbury, Shropshire, probably even the UK, that knew what his plans were for The Walking Dead, that it was just going to end. It was just this huge exclusive. And he thought I was eavesdropping. So he came on my show a couple of months ago, and he was just like, "Yeah, you missed that. You were about 5 meters away from one of the biggest exclusives in comic book history." And I was like, wow. But I think if I'd have heard that, I wouldn't have said anything anyway.
He probably wouldn't have been your mate if you'd.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I did say that to him on the show. I said I wouldn't do that, and he's like, yeah. But I believe in that. I feel like sometimes to do something nice for someone, or to do something that's not, I would never be devious like that. Build that relationship, right? Because everybody that's been on the show before, I still speak to a lot of people that's been on the show. There's people that come back. There's people that drop me emails. I'm doing this. Can you do this for me? And that's because we've built a good relationship. I will never stoop to that kind of level. Do you see that a lot? Have you seen people that have stolen the scoops like that? I
think from in the world of journalism, there are two types of reporters in my experience, particularly when I was at the Shropshire Star. There are the ones who are good, reliable community reporters, and that's where they see their career. And there are reporters who are using you as a stepping stone because they want to get to the nationals.
The predators.
And they're the ones that give the community, local journalists a bad name. I'll tell you a Shrewsbury story, which is, I think, sort of highlights it completely. I'm going back certainly into the 90s now, maybe even late 80s, but there was a bit of a scandal at Shrewsbury College's group, Shrewsbury College, which found its way into the media about they'd been off on a skiing trip, and one of the tutors had allegedly become a little bit too familiar with one of the students.
Okay.
And this had leaked out somewhere, and so I was sent by my news editor. I was working at the Shrewsbury office at the time. Go to the college, find out what you can, get someone to talk to you. And when I got there was me, and there was a guy from The Sun, who's the local reporter from The Sun, who'd obviously already been tipped off. And we sat in the college reception for a long time. The principal was allegedly coming out to talk to us, and they just basically kept us waiting. And the guy from The Sun, who was more experienced, I was quite a young reporter at this point, he said, "I'm not having any of this. I'm going off for an explore." So he went out of the building. I thought I'd better follow him here to see what happens. And he went off around the perimeter of the college, and we found this caretaker, I suppose he was. And the guy from The Sun just said something completely innocent to him. They said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, we're here. We're trying to find out a bit about this scandal, this skiing scandal. Have you heard anything about it?" The Sun guy said to the caretaker, and the caretaker said, "Oh, yeah, I did hear something about that. Yeah, I'm not sure what it was all about. Something completely irrelevant. Yeah. And that was it. And then we went back into the college, found out that the principal had been advised not to talk to us, and I went back to my office and I said to the news editor, "I'm really sorry, I can't get into the college, just won't speak." Next day, a page headline in The Sun: "College caretaker reveals truth of Rumpy Pumpy on the ski slopes." And then I'm hauled into the editor's office to say, "Well, what's going on here? You told me that no one spoke. You told me that that the college didn't say anything. What's this in The Sun?" And this reporter had at best fabricated, at worst completely made up, these quotes from this unnamed caretaker source. And that's the difference, you see, because that reporter was never going to have to go back into Shrewsbury, back to try and gain the confidence of those people. Whereas a local reporter, we had a commercial advertising relationship aside from anything else with the college, but editorially, these are important contacts, and you can't afford to cross the line.
That's why when Jurgen Klopp was like, "I don't speak to the Sun," I'm sorry, no, I was kind of like, yes, I was kind of like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because when you watch those football press conferences, you can look out at the crowd and you'll be like, spot the Sun journalist because he's got the gold chains and so can you tell me why you're, and they're so crass, I'm a journalist myself now. I consider myself, I get press passes, so I guess I'm part of the press. And I think I have the certain amount of integrity that will probably make me fail in the journalist. I mean, you're a journalist, and I feel like I'm too nice.
I don't think it's a question of failing. It's just the type of personality you are. You choose the area of journalism that you operate in.
I'm a positive guy. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. I'd find it hard to say. I mean, take someone I know and be like, "Wow, they've done this today and it's terrible. They need to,
I always try. I hope I've always tried whenever I produce any kind of story to try and put myself in the position of the person I'm writing about and think to myself, well, if that was me, how would I feel about what's being done to me in the public? I think that's the closest you can ever come. But there'll be times when there's a difference of opinion as to what you feel's in the public domain and what may be official. It's very different if you've got, for example, experienced media-trained career politicians who start off with the objective of not wanting to tell you anything or just have an agenda of what they want to broadcast. You have a very different approach. If I'm doing, when you do live radio or TV broadcasts, I would interview a politician who's doing this all the time very, very differently than I would your little small business person who's arrived in the studio and is terrified with the sight of all the microphones and the lights. It's just having a bit of awareness really from that.
Yeah, I feel that because we get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, is it live? I don't know what to say. Don't need to bring anything." I'm just like, relax. Just think I'll buy you a coffee. We'll sit and we'll talk, and that's just the way it is, But you guys seem to be doing something quite positive in Shropshire Business. You're giving people a voice, and I think it's an important time to be doing that. How's the pandemic affected you as a magazine and sort of the content you're providing?
Well, we missed an edition. Our April/May edition was about to be put together when the world went crazy, and so obviously it's a free magazine. So our business model relies completely on advertising income. Yeah. And so I felt that rather than just, and a lot of advertisers will maybe lock in with us for perhaps 6 or 12 months. So I could have printed the April/May issue because we'd got commitments from advertisers to run for a year, but I just felt this is not the right thing to do. So I spoke to the advertisers, gauged their opinion. Most of them said, we're not even trading yet. So we decided not to print our April/May issue. But when we came back, the two big things we had to tackle editorially was what kind of information do people now want? And my view was, right, we want, first of all, evidence of how the county is fighting back. Secondly, what kind of support is available for businesses to aid their cash flow or financial support or grant aid or things like that. And secondly, let's get some expert columnists together to give us some business advice, but also some hope. And so it was important to make sure that we did focus on some of the business people that had found a way of diversifying, and then gradually you start to find that some of our commercial advertisers are saying, well, look, we need to be back in here because we need to let people know that we haven't just closed our doors. So that was the one side of it editorially. The biggest challenge, to be honest, was distribution in that, certainly for our issue, our June-July issue.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Because we've developed a pretty sophisticated distribution point where about 80% of our magazines get delivered directly either to business premises or to popular busy points like the parade where you pick up a copy. And a lot of these either weren't open or they didn't need as many or they needed them in a different way.
Scared about.
So the big thing that's happened is there's been a big shift in the number of people that are now downloading the PDF version of our magazine off our website.
It's good that you got the two options, obviously, because I like a magazine. I mean, when it comes to reading, I prefer a book, but I kind of like sitting there with a tablet, just kind of scrolling across. It's kind of nice. I don't know.
It's a generation thing, isn't it?
I don't know though, because I do love literature, and like there's nothing better than the smell of a book. I'm a bit of a hybrid, I guess.
I'm a bit of a contradiction because I produce a business magazine, but then at home, when it comes to sort of devouring some of the other local media, I tend to read it on my tablet, whereas my wife still wants to actually physically pick up the newspaper and have that experience. So
I was a big fan of Q magazine. I used to love that. I think their articles were just mind-blowing sometimes. And I remember when it came to throwing them out, there was just this big stack of Q magazines. I was kind of like, oh, they were good to pick up now and again, I suppose. But yeah, what you guys got going on soon? The future, what's the future hold for you?
Our current issue, which has just come out on the streets, we're focusing on. If you love the Repair Shop on BBC, Jay Blades, who hosts it, he's just moved to Shropshire and he set up a business in Shropshire, so he's our cover story there. But as we speak at the moment, our November-December issue, we're just starting work on that, and the main thing is that for that, I'm afraid, is just how ready are we for Brexit, folks? It's the thing that's I can sense the yawn coming out already.
That was a genuine yawn.
I can sense the yawn come out already. Nobody could talk about anything else, could there, until COVID? But now, of course, we're less than 100 days away. I couldn't
think of a worse subject to jump onto after COVID than Brexit, to be honest. But you're right, we've got to talk about it. It's our future at the end of the day.
But also an exciting thing, I can give you this one as a semi-exclusive as well, that we're looking at a Shropshire Business live TV show, a monthly TV streamed show, which will be produced right here in Shrewsbury. We'll have some more information about that soon. But that sort of, I'm in my head, I'm thinking of this. It's like it's pitched a bit like the One Show for businesses.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
A magazine-style show where we maybe have a panel debate. We get some experts in the kind of ingredients that we have in the magazine. So there's a group of media folk in and around the area who are all sort of collaborating loosely on it at the moment. And Shropshire Business Live TV is what we're looking to call it. So I will let you know as soon as I've got more information about that. But it could be, we're hoping certainly to have an episode or two out there before the end of the year.
Nice, I really like that. I think that's really good. I think this is what we were talking about earlier about movies and TV, things like that. As we're going to see a lot of independent people being like, I'm going to make something myself then.
Well, it's what you do, and actually, technology these days makes it a lot easier to do that, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking Shropshire Business Live TV sort of brings in all the different elements of what I do.
I like talking.
I like broadcasting. It's a little mini movie, and it brings the business in as well. So we'll have to have you in the studio with us one of the episodes.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I should be first on your list. No, I do like things like that because it's the way things are going right now. I mean, when it comes to live sort of productions like that, I would love to do like a talk show type thing, but I'm more about being behind a microphone rather than in front of a camera. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, it doesn't really bother me.
It's not as different, when I moved from newspapers to radio, that for me was a much bigger shift than moving from radio to television. When I started doing some work for Made in Birmingham Television and hosting some programmes for them, which I did for 3 or 4 years, when I first stepped into the TV studio, I thought I'm a bit of a charlatan here. I'm a con man here. I'm blagging it. And actually, you just realise that the skills that you need to do something like this, once you've got over the self-consciousness of watching yourself and the little ticks that you have on screen, but you can easily sort of iron that out, and it's not so different. And
it's all about experience at the end of the day, and I feel like this is what I'm trying to instill in my team. But even though I've been doing this for years, I've still written here on the top of my page, it's not about you, Whiteley, because I feel like I talk about myself too much. You've got
to promote what you do, don't you? At the end of the day, you've got to do whatever it takes to put your guests at ease and make them feel like you want to make it sound like we're sat in the front room having a coffee and we've known for years, don't you? So exactly.
But where can, if people don't know where to get a copy of Shropshire Business Magazine, where can they get them?
You can come into the parade, of course, and pick one up right now. But if not, you can get a PDF copy from our website, which is shropshirebiz.com. And if you want to drop me a line anytime, it's editor@shropshirebiz.com. If you've got any kind of stories, exclusives, controversies, new appointments, anything like that, drop me a line, because if we can help out, that's what we're here to do.
Well, I think you've been fantastic. I'm really... it's been really good. We've gotten really, really well, and I really appreciate that. Because we've got a lot in common, actually. I believe, and you've been an amazing guest. Have you got any thank yous or any messages for people that you want to say? People that you work with at the magazine?
Well, I have to say we've got a fantastic team at Shropshire Business, because we are all jacks of all trades, really. A lot of people with decades of experience in the media industry, and we're all juggling for all of us. Shropshire Business is part of a sort of media portfolio. So as I said, my Star Wars mate Paul, you'll have to have him on as well. If you love your Star Wars, you could talk to him for a week.
Yeah. See, I do have other shows for that, so we'll have to think. We'll have to have a chat.
I'll hook you up. I'll get my people to talk to your people, and we'll sort that out.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I don't think the biscuit. I mean, we've already talked about Star Wars on the show today, but I don't think that the biscuit. I don't know. Maybe write into me if you're into your Star Wars. We can do more Star Warsy stuff. I'm thinking of doing a live, a Facebook Live sort of StreamYard site type show once a week with the biscuit as well, because I feel that's something that's missing with the biscuit. I feel like because we've done vlogs, we've been at live events, like I said, I'm in front of camera messing up my lines and stuff. I feel like that's what's missing from this show, is just kind of that not physical, but visual interaction with people, because I like that people can write in the comments and we can speak to them on the show. I like that.
That's what's so great these days about any kind of media, that whatever you publish, you get an instant response to people, what they think of it.
Exactly.
It never used to be that way. It used to be the editor of the newspaper would put what they thought was right, and then you'd have to wait for the letters to the editor to roll in through the post a couple of days later. But now, put something out there, people have got something to say about it, there it is, bang, What
was that TV show called where they used to read out complaints letters?
Points of View.
I always remember that. That's such a long-winded way and a weird way of doing things.
Feels quite quaint these days, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was watching Annika's challenge, and that top was way too tight. I could see what she had for breakfast. I don't know, but yeah. You've been amazing. Thank you, Carl.
Well, thanks for your time. Good to see you.
Make sure you check out Shropshire Business. And what about your show as well on BBC Shropshire?
If you want to hear what I've got to say about films, it's Films at 4 every Monday on BBC Radio Shropshire, 4 o'clock. So, and again, if you're a local movie maker, if you're involved in any kind of film-related project, whatever level, if it's a documentary, if you are behind the scenes in front of the camera, if you're looking to screen something even, anything that's got a film connection, again, drop me a line. I've got a different email address for that. That's carl.jones01, because there's loads of Joneses, at bbc.co.uk. Okay. I mean, I know a few people might take you up on that. Gareth from Rocking Horse, he's doing the... Gareth was on our show a couple of weeks ago. He's doing that. I had a chat with Gareth and Ben, who are involved in that project that they're trying to get off the ground with some auditions that we're going to be doing. So yeah, I did a Zoom interview with Gareth. Yeah, I've got a piece about a documentary which is being made all about our own war poet Wilfred Owen, which we'll be talking about on the next show. So it's a mixture of new film releases, new streaming releases, recommendations of what's maybe available free to air on telly. But at the end of the day, we're a Shropshire film show, so we want as many Shropshire connections as we can possibly get. No production is too small.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. You've been amazing to talk to. I'm looking forward to building a relationship with you, because I think we can help each other loads. Listeners, before I go, I need to tell you about our... number one, the fact that this has been recorded at the Parade Shopping Centre in Shrewsbury, just tucked behind St Mary's there. If you've not been here before, make sure you come and check it out. And if you haven't been here for a while, well, where have you been? The place has changed. There's so much going on. The Riverview has got an amazing sit outside place where you can sit now with drinking coffee with one of the greatest views you're going to get in Shrewsbury. There's lots going on here, so make sure you check it out. And also make sure you check out our website as well, which is www.theshrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk. All of our audio is available on there. If you're not a big fan of Spotify, iTunes, or Podbean, where you can also find our show. So make sure you check that out. Carl, thank you so much for chatting to me. I think this has been great.
Pleasure.
We'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.